Hi, welcome to Rev'd Up for Sunday. We are the three clergy of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in New Canaan, Connecticut. I'm Justin Crisp.
I'm Peter Walsh.
I'm Elizabeth Garnsey.
And today we have the privilege of introducing you to your new favorite insult, which you never knew before. Fox. Let's hear the scriptures. A reading from the Gospel of Luke, the 13th chapter, beginning at the 31st verse. Some Pharisees came and said to Jesus, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." He said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me. Listen, I am casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work. Yet today, tomorrow, and the next day I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you. And I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" Here ends the reading. Well, we've got a veritable barnyard here in this reading from Luke's 13th chapter. We got hens and we've got foxes. I mean, what do you make of these?
So I'll start with the fox.
Go for
it. So not only is Jesus insulting him by calling him a fox, that's actually a female fox. If we read it, so it's a vixen. So this is a real a pen dropper here for Jesus. Here he's calling Herod. Now let's just clarify who this fox is. So this is not Herod the Great who built the Temple Mount. This is his son Herod Antipas, and he is the ruler of the tetrarchy of the northern part. He's the ruler of the Galilee area. And he built Tiberias, the city that is still Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee today. And Sepphoris, which I found particularly interesting. Sepphoris is a place that many people who visit the Holy Land go, which is 5 miles from Nazareth. It was a trade route, a junction, a trade route, and likely where Joseph, the carpenter, and Jesus, his son, that whole carpenter thing really means probably mason, by the way. That's why I always thought Jesus had strong forearms. And they would probably have walked to Sepphoris and done their work at Sepphoris. But anyway, all this created by Herod. And Herod, what a guy. I mean, he's involved with the death of John the Baptist, right? Yeah. Because he divorces his first wife, marries Herodias, and then in a little drunken party ends up with John the Baptist's head on a platter. And then we see him again at the end where Pilate, unclear about what to do with Jesus and perhaps looking for an exit strategy here, sends him over to this Herod. And so here we have Herod, who is a player in the drama. He's a player in the drama, maybe not a huge player in the drama, but Jesus gives him that fox. I'm not going to be dissuaded. My mission is not going to be dissuaded by this fox. So there's the first animal.
Yeah, I mean, the fox he's a destructive, bloodthirsty creature, and I'm interested that Jesus calls him that. He acknowledges Herod's power, or the potential power that Herod could have, and he's already proved himself with John the Baptist. And Jesus and John had these parallel trajectories where they, step through the same waters in baptism and so on, and are cousins, and one is the forerunner of the other. Yep. So you get the sense that Jesus is, if he went to see Herod, would be on the same course as John was. But he's he's not unnerved. He's completely calm, and he says, tell him to mind his own business. I have a purpose here. That's true. And so I think it's interesting that Jesus is always a step ahead of that. And also the Pharisees, here they are kind of warning him. Yeah, but
very interesting.
Nowhere else in this gospel are they concerned about Jesus' safety. They're always sort of camping out themselves, ready to pounce on him and waiting for him to misstep and, be the fox that
So
gets...
let me pause you here. So
Yeah.
Luke paints the Pharisees as not good guys,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And here they're saying they're doing a good guy thing, get away from here. And so how are we to interpret this? Is the
Right.
narrator have two different stories here? Is this a real story? This is only in Luke's gospel, this
Right.
passage. And as the characterization of all Pharisees being all bad guys, these are Pharisees, they're not Jerusalem Pharisees. We're in chapter 13, so chapter 9:51, Jesus sets his chin toward Jerusalem. He's heading toward Jerusalem. Are these good guy Pharisees, or are these guys trying to get Jesus to just be quiet and just go away? What do you think? Are these good guy Pharisees or bad guy Pharisees?
That's really interesting. I mean, even in Luke's gospel, Jesus accepts dinner invitations from Pharisees.
Right.
So many of the stories that
Yeah.
we, that are so famous about, Jesus' debates with Pharisees, they happen at like the end of these dinner conversations, right? But it's important to remember he accepted the invitation, and so there seems to be some kind of collegiality between Jesus and the Pharisees. I mean, of all of the extant Jewish like religious sects on offer in the day, he's closest to the Pharisees of any of them, right?
Really true.
I mean, he's a rabbi, he's a teacher. So the Pharisees are the forerunners, really, of rabbinic Judaism.
Right.
And
Yeah.
after the destruction of the temple in 70, they're basically all that's left of Judaism. It's a little too strong, but they're the future of Judaism. Their way of doing things, a way of doing things which is focused on the study of the Torah and obedience to the law and observance of the law, etc. That's really their future. And Jesus seems to identify with that, right? His title is rabbi. He's a teacher of the scriptures and so on. He's at a tangent to the Pharisees, but I don't think that he's nearly as polemical with the Pharisees as sometimes we think that he is. He has disagreements, but some of these disagreements are just in agreements. They're like disagreements among like-minded people.
Amongst the Talmud kind of disagreement.
Exactly.
Rabbis
Yeah.
disagreeing in a
He
how to
stumps them
interpret this.
left and right.
Exactly.
And especially in Luke, I think you're right. He the first place he goes is to the temple, and he says to his parents, "I must be in my Father's house." And there he is sitting at the feet of the Pharisees, the teachers,
That's right.
and quoting scripture with them, and asking questions. And next thing you know, he's preaching out of Luke's scroll.
Yeah.
And so I think you're actually excellent.
Well, and after the
right.
destruction of the temple in 70 A.D., when Jerusalem really is in trouble, much of that Pharisaical Judaism moves up to Tiberias.
Right.
It actually comes up north to Galilee. And,
Yeah.
and Galilee, before that period, was considered Gentile territory and not Nazareth's obviously a Jewish town, but that area was a Gentile area, and so they started to move there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, Jesus is kind of an uber Pharisee. He's like really, really
Ooh,
on
that's a
his
hot take.
game.
Jesus
That's
says
good.
uber Pharisee.
Yeah.
Well, he's sort of the model Pharisee.
Yeah.
He's steeped in his Torah. He's a teacher, and he's also a prophet. And nowhere more than in this passage,
Absolutely.
foretelling the destruction of Jerusalem. And I noted that this double Jerusalem, his way of speaking is it's the divine. I remembered, he says, whenever God is calling people in the Old Testament, he says, Abraham, Moses, Saul, or Samuel, and then even in Acts.
That's really good.
He
I like
says,
that
Saul,
a lot.
Saul.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, but I like that a lot. That's good.
I read it in a commentary, just full
I'm giving you
disclosure.
full credit. I'm giving you
But
full
I did
credit.
look them up, and I was really interested in that, including when we get to Acts, which is also a Lucan writing. That's how God calls out to Saul.
Yeah.
And I love that. And so Jesus is there, lamenting Jerusalem, just like Hosea or, Jeremiah would have done. And the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. I mean, Moses, the Pharisees would have, they have the mantle kind of Moses, they're there to arbitrate the law and everything. And it was Moses who commanded the stoning of false prophets. And so there are a lot of history of that, but I don't think we really remember who it was. But I did read that Zechariah was one of them, and it was sort of when Moses' law goes awry and the false prophet turns out not to be false, but he was stoned to death. And later in Luke's Acts, Stephen will be stoned in Jerusalem, saying the same thing, like, which of the prophets did you not persecute and stone?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of context here that I think it's shorthand, but if you really look up the references, it's really interesting to see Jesus at work and kind of putting all this together from his own history and what's to come. Or Luke, really putting it all together. And indeed, by the time he's writing, the temple is already gone.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, we were talking just before we went live, as it were, before we hit, play on the tape or record on the tape, about how difficult and challenging this particular piece of Scripture is. And for those of you who are in our Maranatha house churches here at St. Mark's and are working with this podcast, working with these Scriptures in preparation for hearing them preached on Sunday and hearing them proclaimed in the reading of the Gospel, in the context of the Eucharistic liturgy, this one's a hard one. But it's one of those where you just start scratching at it, and if you just keep picking at it a little bit,
like a hen.
yeah, like a hen. Okay, you just got to keep pecking. Its mysteries really do open up over time, and so I think that where we started is exactly the dramatic through line of this passage. I mean, the main thing here is I think you've got Pharisees who are trying to do Jesus a solid, okay? They're trying to warn him, dude, Herod Antipas is out to get you, okay? He's already killed John. He's going to get you. Don't you want to get out of here? And Jesus, he will not be dissuaded. He does not cower. He's like, nope, I am on my way to Jerusalem, which is everything for Jesus. So in the Gospel of Luke, Luke's plot turns on Jerusalem. So at the beginning of Jesus' life, he's presented by Mary and Joseph in the temple in the presentation in Jerusalem. He goes out, as it were, into into the hidden life of Jesus. We've got all those years between, when he's teaching in the temple as a kid. And you got to fast forward. You fast forward like through his teens and his 20s, and then you get him at around 30, and he begins his public ministry in the synagogue in Nazareth, the baptism, and the being propelled by the Spirit into the wilderness, etc. You get all that, and that's his public ministry. It really only takes about 3 years there. But he sets his face to Jerusalem, it says, in chapter
9.
It's 9. There we go. In 9:51. It's just after, or shortly after the transfiguration scene. He sets his face towards Jerusalem, and from then on, it's like a basso continuo on Baroque music. Just like bump, 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 bump. The narrative reminds you over and over, he's going to Jerusalem, he's going to Jerusalem, he's going to Jerusalem, he's going to Jerusalem. He's going to his death. Okay, so Jerusalem for Luke is like, and this is an idea I got from Jeremy Williams. He's a brilliant biblical scholar. I knew him. He was a friend from Yale Divinity School. He's fantastic. He now teaches at Bright Divinity School. Cool. And Jeremy, in his commentary on this text, says that Jerusalem is to Jesus as Athens was to Socrates. So in Plato's Phaedo, what do we do? What do the Athenians do with this man of great wisdom, this great teacher? They kill him. And the same thing is going to happen to the great wisdom teacher of Luke's gospel, Jesus. Jerusalem. He goes to Jerusalem, and Jerusalem's going to kill him. And as Jeremy points out, Jerusalem this is not an indictment of like the whole city of Jerusalem, not to mention the Jewish people, right? We always have to remember, Jesus is Jewish. He's not talking to all Jews. Jerusalem here is a synecdoche, which is like a part standing in for a whole or a whole for a part. It's like when we refer to the American political system or politicians by saying Washington, D.C. We don't mean all residents of Washington, D.C., right? We mean the political machinery, those who occupy it, the leaders of our country, et cetera, who reside both symbolically and some of them literally in Washington, D.C. The same's true here at Jerusalem. Jerusalem is his cry of desire for his people and his people's leaders. How long has he longed to gather them as a hen gathers her brood under her wings? And just one last thing on the longing there. How often have I desired is what the NRSV says. So Jeremy Williams also says that there are 3 occasions of the Greek word here, the verb for to desire. And you get it first with Herod. Herod wants to kill you in the Pharisees. In the Pharisees' warning. And then you get Jesus, how long have I desired to gather your children, to gather Jerusalem's children? So Jesus' desire. And then you have, and you were not willing. So you have Jerusalem's desire. Jerusalem doesn't want it. So you got Herod who wants to kill. You got Jesus who wants the flourishing of Jerusalem and all that it represents. Then you have Jerusalem, which doesn't want Jesus. And Jesus gets massacred by this contest of desire. That's what's
Oh,
going on
that's-
in Luke's gospel.
That's so good.
But so here's one question that I have for you guys. Do you think Jesus was afraid? I mean, he has courage, right? He's not cowering here. But how do you think he reacted when he was told this?
Well, I think that I think it's really important that we don't flatten Jesus down to one emotion at one time or always one thing. And so we have in John's gospel where they're seeking to kill Jesus, and he takes off, and he does run away.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that some of this has to do not only with the question of is Jesus fearful or not, it has to do with his clarity about time. The issue is about time more than it's about fear.
Yeah.
And so you started off a podcast or 3 ago talking about Luke's always on the road. You talked about setting his face toward Jerusalem. The actual terminology is actually setting your chin toward Jerusalem. So you're sticking your chin out here, and so you're gonna take take it on the chin. He's setting his chin to Jerusalem, and then we hear this fox is a problem, and he's like, I got demons to get rid of. I got cures to do here. I got my work. Here's my calendar today, tomorrow, next. So he lays out his calendar. And then he said, I must be on my way. Anytime we hear way, Jesus is the way and the truth and the life, and he is on his way to Jerusalem. So we're on the way. So do I think that Jesus is fearful? I think that Jesus is full of all of that. So but it's not necessarily the overwhelming emotion. I'm sure he has fear, but he has for me, when I hear these words, there's an emotion, a warrior emotion here, which is to say, my urge, my psychic energy, in his case, his divine energy too, is so forceful that this guy and his power is like, boom, I don't care. Move me aside. Move me aside. So there should be a fearful moment, but he has a greater energy. He meets it with a greater energy. And as he moves, I'm on the way. I got my job to do here. I'm not going to be dissuaded by this. I mean, it's almost like, female fox he's insulting this guy who probably not happened. Sorry. I don't mean any degradation. Denigration
in a patriarchal society, a man to be called a woman would be an insult. It's not actually. That's wrong, right?
I for sure.
Please, I'm kidding.
Meanwhile, one of my kids is having a fox, put on his body probably as we speak, tattoo.
You heard it here.
And then the lament over Jerusalem, the Jerusalem. I love the doubleness here, which does come down when he's coming down the Mount of Olives before he enters in on that last week. He stops him. There's a church there, Dominus Flavit. Jesus wept. That means Jesus wept in Latin. And Dominus Flavit, where you look up, you're just above. You're just right now above the dome of the rock, above that, and you look down upon this, and where we hear that same lament, really in Matthew's gospel, we get the fullness of that. And so Jesus has got all these emotions in him, lamenting. He is, it's almost as though he can hardly be, he's got so much going on, so he can hardly care about what Herod's up to. It's like, boing. Sorry guys. Tell that guy. Tell that dude. I mean, this nowadays you probably could tell that dude to go jump in a lake, kind of thing. I got other business to take care of here. And as he moves on. So I think your question is really a good question. And then, as he moves. I want to hear what you have to say. Let me hold my tongue on one thing, because I want to say about the hen. But
I'll respond to that.
Respond before I get to the hen.
I do think Jesus, again and again, shows himself to be like any, heightened, trained mystic that we might think of today. A Desmond Tutu or somebody like that, who's just so resolute about what their life is about, and Martin Luther King or. Any other type like that, or the meditation teachers that we know and follow that really live that path and to the fullest, because he sees everything in a context that is so much wider and so much farther horizon than anybody else in his world or our world, for that matter, mostly see. And I just think that courage and fear. I mean, he probably felt it all, but none of it was enough to take him off track or even distract him for a minute. You know, he doesn't miss a beat saying, you know, just brushing Herod aside. And I just get the sense that he probably felt, I mean, he was human. He felt everything and he experienced everything. He got tired. He was hungry. He got upset. He got impatient. But he never lost his vision. And, you know, he always knew what his next step should be and who in the crowd or in the corner or in the shadow he needed to see. And he could like read a room because his senses were operating on this other level, you know, and not because, I don't think because he was divine or whatever. I think it's because he steeped himself in that way of seeing. He spent time cultivating that way of seeing, and you know, he knew himself to be the Son of God, and he also put in the work. It wasn't like a magic trick that he could do at any time. Like he went to the mountain to pray. He went out to the wilderness. He like constantly withdrew to reset his vision and renew himself. And so I think it was like a real way of life for him to, you know, he said and throughout this gospel, I must be in my Father's house. I must proclaim the good news of God in other towns also. I must undergo suffering and be rejected by the elders and be killed and be raised. You know, he knew, to Zacchaeus, I must stay at your house today. Like he always had a purpose. Yep. He was not equivocal about anything. So I like the question, was he afraid? Because I think absolutely yes, but it was never enough to make him turn away, you know? Yeah. Which is like magnifies his courage and magnifies his the importance of his prayer life and how it kept him so clear-headed and courageous.
That's beautiful. I ask this because I think the heart of this passage and where we're going to go on Sunday is Jesus' holy resolve. And how did he get it? And I love the idea that Jesus is both. You know, I believe that Jesus is both fully human and fully divine. But there are ways of speaking about Jesus. To use some really technical theological language, you predicate some things of his human nature and predicate some things of his divine nature. So Jesus does some things qua divine, as divine, so far as he's divine. He does some things qua human, so far as he's human, that kind of thing. And here, one of the things I'm really moved by is that his courage, his holy resolve, is Jesus qua human. Is Jesus as a human being. Jesus, so far as he's human, he does all of these things. His prayer life, his setting everything against the horizon of the one he calls Father and the Father's purpose for him, setting it against the horizon of his journey to Jerusalem, his bigger picture, etc. He's got the whole cocktail of human emotional conflict, but he is undeterred. And his discernment as a human being is unbelievably penetrating. And I think that in a world that is so full of chaos as ours is today, we need to unpack Jesus' resolve, then we need to figure out how we get in on the action. He's both the means and the model, as we used to say around some of our Fully Alive curriculum from a couple of years ago, right? Relationship with Jesus is the way we live a life that's like Jesus, and I want to be as resolved as this guy. I want to be able to go, Fox, stay over there. I'm headed to Jerusalem, whatever Jerusalem it is that God has given me. Now, you had a comment that we left a little while ago. I want to make sure that before we get in here about the hen.
Oh yeah, I just want to and this is very, 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 very fast. So the hen question is in the Hebrew scriptures. The hen is somebody in the scriptures. And when I was in seminary, we were testing texts that were going to be potentially used as Eucharistic prayers for the church, and one of them had prominent the hen that gathers her brood, and it didn't go well for this text. And I remember in particular Paul Marshall, who went on to be the Bishop of Bethlehem, our liturgical teacher, liturgy teacher, and Rowan, God bless, discussing this. And this prayer became known as like the chicken prayer. And this is seminarians at 9:30 at night on a Wednesday evening after a very long day. And it was interesting to me about, you started off with the whole farm animals here. And earlier I'd said we're moving from fox to chicken here, fox to hen. And just how Jesus, again, using language of this is that scripture, that rabbinical Pharisaical thing that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
This is language. He's not making this up. He knows this. This is all in its beauty. So I just wanted to touch that because I think this is a beautiful.
Oh, it's incredibly tender. Yeah.
Tender is a perfect word.
I couldn't find a hen reference, though, in the Old Testament. There's eagles, like in Deuteronomy, and an eagle that stirs up its nest and hovers over its young, that spreads its wings to catch them and carry them aloft. That's a lot more beautiful, magnificent than a hen.
Sounds like our country's logo.
And then there's a lot of hide me in the shadow of your wings, or in Isaiah, the generic kind of birds hovering overhead. The birds hovering overhead, the Lord Almighty will shield Jerusalem. I mean, just like Jesus rides in on a donkey instead of a war horse, here he's a hen instead of an eagle, And there's a vulnerability to that that's just so graphic, juxtaposed to the fox.
Yeah.
Why isn't he an eagle? He could pick that fox off, But he's just going to raise his breast, open his wings, and let the fox just come for him, eventually. It's kind of interesting, why that image. Maybe the hen is in the Old Testament, but I didn't do an exhaustive search. But I was curious about that too, because I remembered shadow of the wings and all that. But not as glorious, an image, but still it is so tender. The mothering kind of hiding her brood, and it's gathering. It's not even protecting, just gathering and putting them under the wings. So even that they won't have in the face of a fox. It's amazing, but it's the thinnest kind of line of protection. But
it is an amazing image. It's one of the sources of the language of motherhood for Jesus, the motherhood of Jesus in the mystic Julian of Norwich, much beloved by all three of us. 14th century English mystic, the first woman ever to write in the English language, we think. And it is interesting to me the gender dynamics of Jesus using the fox as an insult and the she-fox as an insult, right? So trading on the patriarchal thinking of the day, to call Herod a man, a woman would have been, it would add insult to injury with the fox bit. And then he goes on to identify himself with a feminine image, right? So Jesus is subverting the very thing which he seemed to which he threw, the conversational grenade that he threw in Herod's direction. He's subverting it, right? Subverting the patriarchal norm there. But the thing that I'm really left with, Elizabeth, is what you reminded me of, which is that foxes eat hens.
And his sister is a veterinarian.
That's right. She has a lot to say about protecting your hens from your foxes.
Well, we want some responses here, Olivia.
That's right.
Although I have a friend with chickens who it was 4 chickens against 1 fox, and the chickens won.
Oh, we'll have to do it. We'll have to do an additional podcast on that one.
Underdogs. Underdogs. Oh, man.
That's Allie's chickens.
Oh, that's the best. Oh, man. God bless you all. Have fun with this text. Let it wash over you and just start pecking at it and see what you find. God bless you. Take good care. Bye-bye.